Okay, so I wanted to give some quick thoughts on the Bitcoin market because something really interesting is shaping up. Now, all that I'm going to say is it should be understood that I'm setting it on the backdrop that we're possibly going into a recession. We don't obviously know the length or the depth of a recession, but we do know that Bitcoin has never been in a recession. It's about 12 years old, and there's never been a recession in the Bitcoin market. So how it will act if we go into a recession is unknown. But the fundamentals of Bitcoin are that it's a rather illiquid market that is controlled by supply and demand. And so if we can measure the amount of demand for Bitcoin and we know the supply, then we can have a sense of a potential move in the Bitcoin market. So I want to show what I'm seeing here. Number one is that the Bitcoin bull and bear markets typically go in 2-year cycles. Okay, so what we have here on the weekly chart is that Bitcoin saw an all-time high in November of 21, followed by a downtrend all the way into January of 23, where we broke the downtrend. Okay, and now we got up to about 33,000. And on a big picture chart, we've got an upward bias, right? And we have a target of 51.6. Now, typically the up market is kicked off by this event called the halvening. Every 4 years, the Bitcoin reward to the mining computers gets cut in half. So that halvening event, so that reduction in supply of new Bitcoin is going to happen in April of 24. So it's going to happen right out here, right? So what we're looking for is a $52,000 price approximately between now and the halvening event, right? So what's important to recognize is that when sell pressure comes on the Bitcoin market, most of that sell pressure comes from the miners. And the reason for that is all of the entire Bitcoin network and the Bitcoin computer is operated strictly on the profits of the mining rewards. So there's massive infrastructures and massive amounts of electricity needed. And to fund those operations, historically, the miners or the mining companies sell the Bitcoin that they mine onto the market to pay for their operations, right? So when the Bitcoin halvening happens, that sell pressure gets cut in half. And that's typically why people use that cycle or look for that cycle to that bull cycle, that 2-year, up market to start around the halvening event because they know that the sell pressure is going to be cut in half, right? So assuming that demand stays the same, when you cut in half the sell pressure, the price goes up. So if we can know that the demand is increasing and we know that the halvening is coming and the supply is getting cut in half, then we expect higher prices. So what's happening with the demand? So right now, wallets that hold more than one Bitcoin is at an all-time high. In the last year, over 100,000 new wallets have one Bitcoin or more in them, right? So that number is now higher than it's ever been. The other interesting thing is that, we've been in a down market since November of 21. That's about a year and a half or more ago, right? So, but during that downturn, there's been more Bitcoin that has not moved in the history of the Bitcoin network. So the amount of Bitcoin that hasn't moved over the last 2 years is an all-time high as well. So that means there's many people that were buying into, or no, it means that there were many people that did not sell when we saw the move from 70,000 in November 21 all the way down to now. So many strong holders and believers in the Bitcoin, market, according to that stat. The other interesting stat is that the amount of coins that have not moved in 5 years are also at an all-time high. So there's a lot of strength in the people that are holding Bitcoin and believe in the market. Now, the other interesting stat is that miners are starting to be profitable and they're not selling their coins. It shows that miners' net positions are increasing. Typically, miners are among the most sophisticated Bitcoin price analysts in the world because their whole business and is built on understanding the price or it hinges on the price of Bitcoin. And so they've been watching Bitcoin and they invest more money than anyone in the analytics of the price. So this is all, looks like the demand is growing. We know that the supply is going to be cut in half in around April of 2024. But then there's also this really big event that seems to be on the horizon. And this is that BlackRock, the biggest financial institution in the world, has applied for a Bitcoin ETF, which means that they have reason to believe that there's a growing demand for institutions to own Bitcoin. Now, the reason why they apply for an ETF is because they get a management fee on all the Bitcoin that's held in their trust. Now, if that happens, it's going to be a really material event for the demand side of Bitcoin, because they have they have $30 trillion on their Aladdin financial management system, right? So just them alone could move the demand incredibly, right? But the other thing it shows is that if that ETF gets approved, then all the other regulatory bodies will have a bias to lean towards when they're regulating all the other institutions in the world. So it's going to mean a favorable bias for all the other institutional capital that's interested in the Bitcoin market. So this all leads us to believe that there's potentially something very interesting on the horizon. And when we're looking at the Bitcoin price pattern, right now we're at 26.7. The weekly chart shows a price of 51.6. When I think about the fact that 56% of the Bitcoin hasn't moved from the $70,000 price all the way down to 16,500 and then back up to 32, 33,000, I don't have any reason to believe that those sellers are going to all of a sudden sell into a market at 30 or 40,000. Seems to me like they're going to be holding all the way up into these measured move targets. So a measured move target is just a technical target. We could go over that at a later date. I've talked about that in videos in the past. But anyway, to me, this is a very interesting risk reward to purchase Bitcoin at these levels and consider selling some of it, at the 51, 52,000 number, and then waiting to see, if the Bitcoin ETFs are approved, we could see a whole new, phase of the adoption of these digital assets. So I hope this helps, and all the best.